Do you own a home or have plans to in the future? Don't miss the Dino and Nelson Show, Sunday afternoons at 1 p.m. on Money Radio, KTLK AM 1150. You'll get all the information you need to know about what's happening in the local real estate market and how to take advantage of that knowledge. How to approach home ownership or mortgage financing with design, vision, and focus, as well as accurate information. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, listen to Real Estate Radio with Dino and Nelson Sunday afternoons at 1 p.m. right here on Money Radio, KTLK, AM 1150.
And I wanted to bring on Phil Immel, who's joined us from Prudential. Phil, you've got the two offices in Ritz Cove and up in Beverly Hills. Phil has been around a long time. I thought I was an aged veteran at 28 years, but he's been in the marketplace for 38 years. Number one agent for Prudential over the 11 of the last 12 years, ranks in the top 40 with Prudential out of 62,000 agents, and has been dubbed the voice of real estate. He's been on Fox News. He's been on CNN, KNX, the real estate guru. I mean, I want to kind of just pitch and pass some questions here in terms of what you see in the modification world and if it's good, if you think it's good for what's taking place in the marketplace.
Well, I think it's been helpful. Somewhat. It's been obviously a very big mess in the United States for the last 5-6 years as this recession's gone on.
There you hear it, everybody. The guru said it's been a very big mess here in the United States.
It's been a very big mess.
Kind of like this crowd I'm with. Anyway, the reality is the banks were completely understaffed, undertrained, and everything. So it's just been like moving icebergs to get this thing to where it is. But when there's professionals like Bill and others, I would use, even with my experience in real estate brokerage and other things I do related to the industry, if I was going to do a loan mod, I'd go to a company like that because the sophistication level and the art of the communication and the constant contact you need with these banks, and there's so many variables about who the servicer or investors are, it's way too complex. It's better to, if you want to clean your house yourself, clean your house yourself. If you don't like to clean your house, you wouldn't want to do a loan mod. Go figure out where the professional is. So that would simplify it for the consumer. But in terms of the marketplace itself, it's prevalent all over Orange County and LA County. Nobody's immune. There's very big luxury homes that have situations happen with loan mods, short sales, things. So
nobody's been protected. Bill, the agent community, they're starving for inventory. There's a shortage of inventory, and so there's some opinion out there that the loan modifications are just keeping people in the properties longer, homeowners in properties longer, that they really can't afford. And so what's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't think I want to offer an opinion. I'll kind of rely on the U.S. Treasury Department quarterly HAMP report that 88% of people who get a loan modification continue to meet those obligations. So there's always a small segment who may have another life event that happens, or maybe something happens with their job or income that, or quite honestly, maybe get to the point where they realize a strategic default is a better, or a short sale is a better alternative for them. So there's always a segment that falls out. But the truth of the matter is loan mods work. They save people significant money. And you have to qualify, so it's a subset of the population that may qualify for one. But
now, is that number up from, say, a couple years ago? Because
the problem is that, historically when Treasury first rolled out HAMP, they rolled it out where you could give a verbal application to your lender and everybody was able to get a trial mod. So the early perception was it didn't work because none of these trial mods got converted to permanent mods because nobody could support the income they were telling the banks. Well, they changed guidelines. Now it's a full doc process. Everybody we get a trial mod for, unless some rare life event happens while they're in the trial period, winds up getting a permanent mod. And, the program works. It's very effective. It's saving, hundreds of thousands of homeowners their homes. And, it's a great alternative if you're not really a refi candidate.
Bill, I appreciate the expertise. And it's comforting to me that I can take my consumer that I've been with for so many years and turn them over to you where they can get reliable resources, clear answers. If they're in, they can understand how to proceed. If they're not eligible, they can be vetted out so they're not chasing rainbows. I'm a big fan. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I wanted to ask you this one other question, Phil, before we break for some commercials. And this was a quote that you had about the homeowner. You shouldn't use your home as a piggy bank or an ATM. What do you mean by that?
That was from a previous interview. What I mean by that is, the reason people should buy homes, and I believe the market's very stabilized in Southern California since the first part of this year, under $1 million. The luxury market suspect as a sidebar. But if you haven't owned a home in a number of years and you have the capacity to buy a home at today's historically low interest rates, over 60 years low, jump in the market, shop and buy something. But I think what I mean by that is you shouldn't buy a home and purely look at the investment and think you're going to sell it in 3 years, flip it, trade up, trade up, trade up. That's kind of like the analogy in the roaring 20s. Now we're in the 30s. Everybody's going through the hard times after the great run. So buy a home to live in it for your family and raise your kids there if that's what you're doing. And don't make it an ATM machine to pull your money out of it and refi it constantly and end up upside down and in the dilemma that many people have found themselves in.
It's a very salient point, and it was underscored last week when we were with General Lyon. And his first comment when he entered homeownership, his goal was to provide a home for his family.
Guys, welcome back to the Dino and Nelson Show here on K-Talk, AM 1150. Can be reached at 888-814-3335. 888-814-3335 or at dinoandnelson.com. We're back with Phil Immel from Prudential Ritz Cove in Beverly Hills. And this next segment is brought to you by CDA Law Center, reliable loan modification services. Text the word MOD, M-O-D, to 313131 or call the Dino and Nelson Show.
I wanted to ask you, Phil, about the Beverly Hills market. I just picked up this from last week's stats. That the average or median price, $3.5 million, 236 properties have been on the market. Average marketing time, 191 days up in that luxury market. Is that shortening up, or is the luxury market still hurting?
Well, all the markets are coming back. The luxury market's coming back slowly, but it is coming back and clearly better than it's been in 5 years.
What about Monarch Beach?
Pretty much the same, lagging behind the Beverly Hills greater LA market because you've just got such an economic engine in LA, and you've got the whole entertainment industry, and Beverly Hills is the core of it. So you've got tremendous employment and income areas, and so that market's in celebrities that can just drop in and pick up a $10 million, $20 million house like that,
and write a check for it. You've worked with the celebrity community. What's that like?
It's actually a very interesting group of people. I mean, it's as diverse as looking down the road, all your friends. None of my friends are the same, and many of these celebrities are from the finest, greatest people I've ever met. And they're all really good people. They're just unique individuals, but they have an entourage, obviously, of, lawyers, CPAs, personal managers, most of them based locally, but some of them, I've been on the phone with people in Nashville that are managing a celebrity star, for example.
So when you're working with Britney Spears, is she the decision maker, or is she deferring to her management?
She defers to her management. Her family, immediate family, is pretty well involved. Now, I'm sure that will be changing this year as she gets married again.
Yeah.
But she's got an entourage. When you work with a group like that, you've got probably 20 different people we had to interact with, and her circumstances are beyond the normal. But if you have an executive for a major studio or something like that I've represented as a client, it's pretty much that client's, especially if they're on the business side, they're very involved in the transaction, or the spouse is as well. Very smart people, and smart enough to know they're not experts in real estate or mortgage or different things, but they do have, their business bankers and managers and that type of thing just to oversee everything. And they're a great group of people.
So let me change gears and go on a broader scale. Just on the housing market overall, is the housing market going to lead our economic recovery?
It would sure be great if it did. I remember what it used to be 16% of GDP, and obviously all the related business that happens with the home sale, new carpet, new paint, new kitchens, new everything, really stimulates the economy. I think we're kind of in a slow growth period still for a number of years. I think it's recovering. There could be another blip before it's over, but I think, I wouldn't expect the go-go boom years to happen in the next decade or two.
Even though we're seeing a run-up in values right now, pretty much across the board, it's just in those lower price points. We're not going to see the kind of exuberance that we saw perhaps in the middle 2000s.
Right. I would say, it's more the run-up in the number of home sales and the lack of inventory that's driving the market. But the valuations, they're kind of breaking even. They're 1 to 3 or 4%. They're not double-digit. 10, 20.
Month over month.
Yeah, it wasn't, I remember Laguna Beach one month had 46% appreciation over the prior year, over the prior month. It's like, there's always aberrations. You have to have enough statistics to do it. But we're not going to see, and hopefully we don't see it, because that's part of the pain we're in right now is, if you shoot really high, you're going to fall really far. And that's just the cycles of real estate.
And we're the consumer, I'm curious, Dino, if they're going to have the discipline when they're in this multiple offer. They're thinking that they need to rush in and buy homes right now. And I hear a lot of instructions coming to the agent community of offer full price, and you're scheduled or pre-approved to raise that in 10 or 15,000, whatever dollar increments up until I get the home.
Well, I think it's finally happening that way because people are just tired of losing out. Because there are cash offers, there are offers above asking, and the people are just sick of losing.
In that multiple offer environment, you're not seeing it in the luxury high end, let's say above $1 million, but in the $1 million and below segment, there is multiple offers. How do you coach your customer to compete in that against the all cash, somebody that just wants to write a check?
Well, I think that the obvious thing is, and it's so obvious to all of us because we're in the industry, but it's really simplistic. You have to get, if you're going to get financing, get not just pre-qualified, but pre-approved. And if you're not sure the definition of that, call into these gentlemen on the show. They can tell you, but you really want to be the equivalent of an all-cash buyer subject only an appraisal on the property you buy. Because the probability is you're going to run into, I would say, 28% of the sales that have happened in the last 2 years have been to investors. And most of them are all cash. And so you've got, and they have proof of funds. They can just get their private banker to write a letter, or they show their statement says, I've got cash to buy that $500,000 house. And where the first-time buyers getting knocked out of these deals is they don't even have the opportunity if they're doing an FHA deal or conventional financing. So get with your lender, get fully approved, everything ready to go. And I think if you're buying an REO, which we represent some of them, the banks actually would like to sell homes to consumers, not investors. But again, the consumer must get pre-approved, number one. Number two, and not just self-serving, is find a realtor who gets it, who's got a lot of experience in this. Don't use what we call the DNA family agent person.
DNA agent.
DNA, in other words, you're related to my sister-in-law. She quit teaching last summer, so she's over here selling real estate. You got to have somebody that's a shark, that's very understanding how the market works, who has a great reputation with the other brokers. Because I know when we do a deal as the Immel team, it shows up if there's 3 offers on the table or 5 offers on the table. And if I call the other broker and say, we're going to submit an offer, I can almost assure you 90% of the time we're going to get the deal because they know we do deals, we do them right.
Right.
And that's important.
That's astute advice, and there is a big problem. We sweep up behind the elephant all the time in terms of these other lender groups that are, quote unquote, pre-qualifying somebody.
Right.
And the pre-qualification is, all right, they look at an application, they look at a credit report. Yeah, you're good to go. And then when we actually dig into the transaction, now when we come in to try and put that transaction together, they may have never been qualified. So I really like the advice, get all the way approved, just subject to identifying which home that you want to buy and which one you're going to be successful in your negotiations after. And then you're good to go, subject to an appraisal.
Right.
That's actually a good point because I've been so many times now my clients are saying, I'm getting bid out every single time. I don't know what to do. Do I offer more? How much more? And even some of the real estate agents are saying, will the house appraise if we go higher? And you said something earlier that kind of goes along with how I feel and what I've been doing lately. And basically when that's happening, I tell my clients, this is what you do. Along with the pre-approval letter that I'm offering, that I'm writing for you, I'm also sending a close on time guarantee that says the seller is going to get $100 a day if we don't close on time.
That's brilliant.
And if that's not going to work, then tell them you can close in 15 days. Is that aggressive? It is because it's tough out there. However, we do at First Centennial Mortgage go through the process not as a pre-qualification, but more of a pre-approval. Mm-hmm. And we know what we're doing. We know if the loan's going to go through, and we get it 60-70% done. So if offer gets accepted and we need to do it, we can do it in 15 days. And then it's just like being an investor as a cash buyer.
Well, the other thing to do is if you're a buyer, try to remember, stand in the other person's shoes. I mean, in any business situation, you always want to do that. But if you're the seller and you've got this property on the market and say it was $700,000 price, whatever the number is, and you start getting 3 to 5 offers on this thing the first week, your first thought is you've underpriced the listing. What's wrong with my listing agent?
Right,
so
right,
there's that conversation, but it's probably just priced accurately. But the main thing is what does that seller want? Sometimes writing a personal cover letter, I think, is very important to the homeowner. Explain the family, humanize this thing because it's all a lot of electronic transferring around. Humanize it with a good cover letter as the buyer.
Phil, I really want to thank you for coming on to the show. 35 years of experience, the real estate guru. You've got your marketplace up in Beverly Hills and the Ritz Cove down in Orange County with Prudential. Dino, I want to just close out with a couple of quick questions that we've had from our listeners this week. This segment is being brought to you by CDA Law Center, reliable modification services. And for those of you that were listening to the modification earlier, if you have any interest, if you want to find out exactly where you really stand, text the word MOD, M-O-D, 31 to 313131. That's text the word MOD to 313131. You'll get some accurate information. So, Dino, we were talking about the markets that Phil specializes in, Beverly Hills and the Ritz Cove. And I wanted to bring Bill Bergschneider in from USA National Title so we can ask this question on possible deed restrictions, things that buyers need to know. We were talking about the markets that Phil specializes in, Beverly Hills and the Ritz Cove. And I wanted to bring Bill Bergschneider in from USA National Title so we can ask this question on possible deed restrictions, things that buyers need to know. Okay, Bill, so before we get to Stump Dino, I got to ask this question, and this is in the marketplace where Phil Immel specializes in. What type of restrictions are on record that a buyer should be aware of in Beverly Hills and the Ritz Cove areas?
Oh, perfect question. You have old restrictions. You have anything that's developed new. You may have some height restrictions. So your typical CC&Rs in which you have privacy areas. You have what a new buyer can or can't do. In other words, there may be a wall that they like or don't like. They may want to tear that wall down. They've got to do a couple of things. They've always got to contact the city for proper permits. Then they search out their restrictions, look at those deed restrictions, and see how high they can build. If there's any color restrictions, some of these have very, very exact neighborhoods that have requirements. All these things get violated here and there. What happens is if you violate the city or the county or the tax assessor comes after you, violate a restriction issue, and your neighbor's attorney comes after you. Sound advice. That's Bill Bergschneider from USA National Title. Thanks, Bill, for joining us. I needed to clear that up. Have a great day.
Thanks, Bill. Take care.
Stumping you. We've gone through 2 shows now, and we've been just exceptionally nice to each other. I don't like it. I don't know how you're feeling.
It's not normal.
Yeah, I know. This is not how we treat each other. But out of Long Beach.
And I had some really great opportunities, by the way, when we're just, what did you say? We're shoveling behind the elephant?
Sweeping up behind the
elephant. Gosh.
That's good stuff. Out of Long Beach, a purchase was ready to close. The termite was not completed by the seller, and it caused a delay in the close of escrow. Seller turns around and says that he's not going to pay for any of the extension fees for the financing for the buyer.
Yep. First-hand experience. That was actually my transaction. The seller he thought he underpriced his home, so decided he didn't want to do anything. Didn't tent the place. Didn't do what he was supposed to do. My buyer, we were set to find out nothing was done. So what happened? We had to extend the loan for a week. It cost a little over $500, and then the battle began. And what do you do? He's like, what do I do?
Exactly.
And
all right,
the answer is you close escrow, and if you really want to sue him for $500, you sue him. There's nothing you can do.
All right, last question out of Woodland Hills before we end our show today. We co-signed for a new car for our daughter during our refinance. Now my lender's telling me that I don't qualify. Why would I talk to my lender on buying my daughter a car?
Because your lender knows everything during that 30-day escrow. You consult with him no matter what. Anything that has to do with finances, you consult with them. Anytime you open up credit, it could change your credit score, which would change everything. It could change your debt ratio, which will possibly, make you a decline. It's just something you don't do when you're buying a house.
Sound advice. Listeners, we're going to get back to Dino and I just taking shots at each other again, so don't worry. Next week, we got the CEO of First Centennial Mortgage and feng shui author Shelley Sparks. We'll be back next week. This is Dino and Nelson here on K-Talk AM 1150, and you can reach us at 888-814-3335 or at dinoandnelson.com. We'll see you next week.